Welcome to the 2020 Virtual Walk in Penn's Woods. I'm Sally Zano, President of Manatee Conservancy, and this walk was created through a partnership among Manatee Conservancy, the Dauphin County Woodland Owners Association, and the Pennsylvania Game Commission. Today we'll take a trip through some parts of State Game Lands 211 with Steve Bernardi, Land Management Group Supervisor of the Pennsylvania Game Commission. Steve manages 7 state game lands in Dauphin and Lebanon County, totaling over 86,000 acres, including this game lands, and he will discuss some of the forest management and wildlife management techniques being used to keep this forest habitat in a healthy state and to enhance its value for game, other wildlife, forest health, and public use. First, I'd like to introduce you to your other companions for the day. Along with Steve at the top left, your other hosts are Mike and Glenda Thomas, President and Secretary of the Dauphin County Woodland Owners Association, Rich Zano, Board Member and Photographer for Manatee Conservancy, myself, Deb Everly, Vice President of Dauphin County Woodland Owners, and Lindsay Glessner, Manatee Conservancy Outreach, who is wearing the GoPro today. And that's Reese, who's our mascot for the day. It's a wonderful day to take a walk in Penn's Woods, and we thank you all for being here with us. So let's get started. State Game Lands 211 is one of the largest roadless areas in Pennsylvania. The Appalachian Mountains transect Dauphin County, and this is a close-up of the central part of the county showing these mountains. The gold area is State Game Lands 211, which is just under 44,000 acres and extends far into Lebanon County. We begin where you see that little P at the west end of the lower red dotted line, the Stony Valley Rail Trail. Then we'll go off the beaten path as Steve takes us up the mountain to show us several different management areas. We met on the valley floor, and we started by asking Steve to describe some of the tree types and the use of controlled burning.
For us, burning in the woodland setting is to promote oaks. Oak is the only species left that produces the kind of food tonnage that supports wildlife. We used to have the American chestnut, which was a reliable food source every year, but as most of you know, that's gone, pretty much gone now since the 30s. So oaks are the only species. And oaks are declining because of lack of fire suppression, conversion because of lack of fire to maples, birches, black gum. So we don't get the regeneration. Add into that noxious weeds and insects that we didn't have before, and there's a lot of things against the oak tree right now. So we're trying to help them out by burning. Oaks can tolerate different intensity fire depending on their size. Even the seedlings, it may top kill, but oaks have a deeper root system, so we can top kill the maples and birches and small beech and black gum, and then when things start to grow back, oak can sometimes outcompete because it has an established root system.
Steve, what about hickory?
Hickory's desirable.
Means good crop as well.
Good wildlife food. Depending on the species and how old, it can resist fire as well. The forests we have today, or before this things got out of hand here with no burning, our oak forests were developed from the fires and the clear cutting that was done in the late 1800s, early 1900s with repeated fire. They didn't have the insects in the invasive species, and they didn't have the deer herd for a period of time there as well. So we're trying to bring fire back on the landscape to hopefully promote oak regeneration and keep them on the landscape for wildlife. And it's a good timber crop too.
From the valley, we get in our vehicles and start up the mountain. This road is also sometimes called Stagecoach Road because of its historic use, but it's not open to vehicles except for official use. It provides a wonderful experience for intrepid hikers and has varied scenery and habitat along the way.
The name of the game out here for plants is light and space. So if you've got a certain cover type and it fills up the ground, nothing else is going to grow there. So when we do a sale, a lot of times, or even in just open woodland, a lot of times you'll get maples and birches and those black gums, the species I was telling you about. and you'll get some oak seedlings as well. But when oaks germinate, they put up a couple leaves the first year and they start pushing roots. And this goes on for 3, 4, 5 years. They're pushing more roots than they are stem and leaf. Birches, poplar, maples, they put all their energy coming up. So they're growing tall, putting out a lot of leaves, but shallow root system. Plus the oaks have the root collar is below grade. So when you burn it, it preserves that plant. So when you top kill, you're killing the maples and the birches and the poplars. But the oaks, you're top killing them, but they have an established root system that's deep, and that gives them that competitive advantage then when things start to regenerate. So when we did it, this is like a shelter wood cut over here. We burned through this a couple years afterwards because it was regenerating in birches and poplar and stuff. So we wanted to top kill that to give some advantage to the oaks. So you can see the difference over here. We burned this section as well, but then we also did a non-commercial cut where we took out the bigger maples and birches that the fire didn't kill. Depending on the intensity of the fire, depends on how big an established tree of those non-desirable species it can kill. So to kill a big maple this big, you'd have to have pretty intense fire, and you could damage your overstory that you want to keep. So after we burned through here and took out the seedlings, then we came in with the non-commercial and cut the maples, the larger birches, and that kind of stuff. And you can see the difference in what's grown on that side with the shade versus this that's been opened up. And this is only the second growing season for this section here. So as that relate to private woodland owners, if you do a proper timber sale and high grading or diameter limits or select cutting is not a proper timber sale. If you're a member of the Pennsylvania Forestry Association, any forester, service forester is concerned about proper regeneration, they would not have you do that on your property. So if you do a proper cut and you do get encroaching species that you don't want and not enough oak, if you wait a year or two and with prescribed fire, you could top kill that. It's cost effective versus herbicide or going in by hand and trying to cut that stuff. So you have to kind of watch what your species composition is and then find out the best way to adjust that. And we're also doing this for early successional habitat. As most of you may know, that Pennsylvania most of the forests are 100 to 150 years old in that area. We're lacking early successional habitat, which a lot of birds and game animals need, especially grouse, woodcock. A lot of the warblers need early successional. And deer, if you like deer, I always consider them somewhat like overgrown rabbits. They like thick stuff like this too, but they do like mature forests for that mast food that's produced from the mature tree.
How is the success for the grouse in this area since it's been redone here?
Well, we just started this in the last few years, and as you may know, the West Nile virus has been identified as a population killer for grouse. I don't know if the biologist is running a drumming survey here or not, but we're trying to create early successional habitat across this game lands. We do have grouse here. We've always had grouse here. Not as much as up north perhaps, but there's always been grouse. There's fewer now, but we're trying to make better habitat so they hopefully can get through this West Nile thing and maybe develop immunity and then pass that on to their offspring so there's more grouse again.
In regards to that, does the Game Commission work with the Rough Grouse Society? As you know, retired game biologist Ben Jones is now the CEO of it. Folks work in conjunction with them?
All the time. All the time we work with them. I've had a grant, a $25,000 grant for early successional work on the other end of this game lands. We have another big project that's being funded by the Rough Grouse Society on game lands 80 further east from here. And we're trying to develop areas that are up high on these mountains where there's less chance of those mosquitoes that carry that disease to affect the grouse.
So Steve, when you said that you did a cut after the burn on this section of the land, you just let the stems lie then? You just...
Right, it was non-commercial. We hired a contractor, we just cut them and let them lay. And that gives structure on the ground for grouse. They don't like a clean floor, forest floor. They like structure in there for nesting and cover. Plus a lot of other species like that kind of thing as well.
From here, we headed the whole way up to the top of the mountain, where we will find some unique habitat. As we reached the top of the mountain, we were able to see the ranges. It's a beautiful time to be on the mountaintop, not just for the autumn beauty, but for the vistas that open up as the leaves fall. Here we stopped in 3 locations to discuss invasive alien weed removal, tree species, and habitat work.
Some of it had not gone to seed yet.
That's all. Actually, Steve looks like it's off of it because I was up here.
Reese, get back here. It's just... Oh.
So this may not apply to private woodland very often unless someone owns a large piece of property and they have high ground like this, but we're going to try to convert this to an oak savanna at some point, so it'll get repeated burning to try to establish grasses and forbs plus scattered trees and pitch pine. This habitat did exist in the past, in history, but because of lack of fire, these kind of places disappeared. So on these mountaintops with sandy soils, these oak savannas and scrub oak savannas were pretty prevalent, so we're trying to bring some of that back. But here's an example of an invasive species, mile a minute. Now it's kind of this brown stuff now, and if you look out across, you can tell it's laying over top of everything. This is one of the worst ones for forested setting, I think. It's an annual plant, so it grows every year from seed, and that's how much it grows. That's why they call it mile a minute, because it seems like it can grow about that fast. And it gets clusters of seed. You can see some here. They start out green, but when they mature, they're like a metallic blue. And unfortunately, birds love them because that's how it gets spread around.
Yeah, there's some over there.
Here's a close-up of the metallic blue berries, and you can see the leaf structure there.
So, to control it, fire really doesn't seem to control it. I was going to try to burn this earlier before the seed was ripe to try to kill the seed with fire, but the conditions weren't right, so we couldn't do it. And I'm not sure if it would work, but we were going to try it. Mostly what we use is a pre-emergent herbicide to try to kill the seed when it germinates so it doesn't produce the plant. But you have to keep after it for several years because that seed stays viable, they say, up to 7 years or maybe more. So noxious weeds are a problem. Another one is stilt grass. And I don't see any right here. Well, I'm sure we'll find a spot later and we'll point that out. But pre-emergent herbicide, if it's all stilt grass or all mile a minute, you could use a foliar spray of glyphosate or Garlon or triclopyr. Penn State Extension has, I just saw on the newsletter that they've come out with a herbicide charts, I guess, for different noxious weeds, so it'd be a good resource to refer to for control of a lot of these plants. So that's what we're trying to do here. Oak savanna, promote this varied herbaceous, shrubby habitat, not only for grouse and game species, but also golden winged warbler. That's the kind of place they like. Ground nesters with this type of varied habitat, ground habitat.
Have you seen golden wings here?
No, and we have it on Game Lands 210. We're hoping if we build it, they will come.
You have ceruleans though up here, don't you?
Ceruleans are more in the timbered areas, but yeah, I've heard them here. I've never really came up to see if they're nesting here. But yeah, these ridges were hit hard with gypsy moth, which took off the oak overstory, and then with salvage cutting and a seed source somewhere. A lot of these ridge tops are just full of Polonium and Ailanthus. We're trying to control them. Of course, we have some funding now for Ailanthus because the spotted lanternfly. We've targeted areas with a lot of Ailanthus, try to kill them to get rid of that host species to hopefully limit the spread and or propagation of lanternfly.
Have you seen the lanternfly here?
Not here, but they're just over the mountain.
Yeah.
They're in Dauphin County.
In regards to the Game Commission, where we're located now, do the disabled have the access to up here?
No.
Okay, only the lower section?
Lower road is open to handicap ATV. Game Lanes 210, the road that goes through there, is also open, but because of the type of road it is,
Right. Just curious.
and the other side is rough gone down, so it's just not feasible.
I was surprised of the width of compared to some of these mountaintops. They're pretty.
Oh yeah, this is kind of a
Come up
wide
to the peak
top.
and that's it. You look them down both sides.
You've got a whole bunch of vernal ponds located up here.
In places, yes. Where are we at? Yeah, there was some out in here and some further east.
Yeah.
Now Steve leads us over to a managed meadow area where we see a very different habitat and many native plant species, both planted and naturally occurring. Our beautiful weather is holding up, so some of these species are set off beautifully under the blue sky. Here's some milkweed pods, goldenrod, echinacea or coneflower. There's Reese. And this beauty is a red-leaf black gum.
Most of the grass is big blue stem, and you can see how tall it gets. We're trying to get away from that. We're trying to get a lower growing situation, so some of the seed mixes we've developed, we'll try to keep them under 3 feet, and we've gone more to little blue stem versus big blue. Little blue stem's a little harder to get established, but you know, turkeys like to forage in here and grouse and stuff. They like that cover, but turkeys also like to be able to see, and they can't see out of here. So I don't know that they're using it that much. Maybe early in the spring before everything gets real tall, but we're trying to keep a lower, what I call a lower prairie mix, low growing prairie mix for the native grass for that reason. And they don't like it real thick, so the little ones can get through. So try to keep the seeding down and control the smaller stuff so they have space in between those plants to get around.
We noticed that Steve was standing right in front of a nice example of a pitch pine, so we asked him about it.
What's the, is there a specific wildlife benefit for the pitch pine?
Well, there's certain birds, I think, that eat the seeds, foraging for insects. I've seen
Crossbills.
crossbills with red-breasted nuthatches and white-breasted nuthatches as well. But it's a species that was native, it is native and was part of the landscape. So.
And like you were talking about the oaks, don't they have a unique tap system as well?
Yeah, they have a J-shaped root collar or whatever when it comes up out of the ground. It's protected from the fire. So, and we've even torched mature trees like this, and they resprout, which I didn't realize they did that. But, but even if you top kill the young ones, they'll resprout from that root collar.
At our last stop, we were greeted by a spectacular witch hazel bush before we pushed our way partway into the woods, near a location being used to enhance habitat for both the ruffed grouse, our state bird, and the endangered Allegheny wood rat, our only native rat. You will hear some wind in this clip.
There are wood rats here, not a lot, but there is a colony out here. So he went around and marked certain spots to release certain trees. They're just like 30, 40 feet across is all they are. So we had a contractor come in. Before he did the cutting work, though, he came in early spring and did a pre-emergence up along the road and out this road. Probably didn't see any stilt grass out here because that pre-emergence did a really good job. It was just full of stilt grass on this side of the road going out, and a little bit on that side as well. Most of it was on this side of the road that we just came out, and it did a real good job of getting rid of them. We also targeted Colonia and Atlantis up here as well, mostly basal treatment, but some of the bigger ones, they did hack and squirt on those. So there's a lot of rock outcroppings further west from here. Doesn't really show that much here, but this is Stony Mountain, Stony Valley, so there are rocks here.
So what is the exact habitat that they like? What is their preference?
Rocky outcroppings,
Yeah.
They cohabitate with rattlesnakes and other snakes. They don't seem to bother each other, but they do need, food source. So another reason to try to promote oak is, they like those and soft mass trees as well. Remote areas like this, and that's one of the problems is their little colonies are so fragmented. There's no continuous groups of them. So they end up having isolated populations, and you know what that can cause with genetics. If something happens there, then you can lose the whole population. I walked out to inspect the work when they were finished, and was walking up on some of these big rock outcrops, and just about to step up on this flat rock, and there was another rock here, and there was a black-faced rattlesnake curled up under there. I'm guessing it was a gravid female. So I started looking around. I found a yellow-faced rattler curled up over the next rock. I looked around some more, couldn't find any more, but I was careful where I put my feet after that. I did have my snake leggings on. But yeah, this is pretty extensive work. We're hoping that by releasing some of the food-producing trees and getting some blackberries and stuff growing in those openings, and create a better food source to help bolster that wood rat population.
At this point, we said goodbye to Steve and thanked him for all of his knowledge that he shared with us. Many of us enjoy hiking, hunting, and passive recreation in these game lands, and we appreciate a better understanding of all the work that goes into keeping them healthy. We then made our way down the mountain back to the Ellendale Gate, where we took a little walk along the rail trail. The valley has a rich history and offers an accessible way to enjoy the beautiful autumn scenery. We'll share a few scenes with you. There's so much to see here. The more slowly we walk, the more we can notice ferns, mosses, salamanders, and our Pennsylvania native tree species. We didn't have time to get into a conversation about the health of the hemlock trees, but we were happy to notice that down here along Stony Creek, there were some healthy hemlock populations. The woolly adelgid, an alien insect invader from Asia, has devastated our hemlock forests in many areas of the state. We thank you for joining us and hope you can enjoy this and other places in our Pennsylvania woods on your own in the near future.